there. And not only that, we were just discussing this on our panel. We don't remember a time in 2020 that
everyone remembers going to bed, thinking Donald Trump had the momentum, we had the win, we're all holding back, nobody wants to say.
Dude, I'm nonstop coffee because I'm like, I can't go to sleep. I remember what happened last time I went to sleep.
Yeah, but I really do not remember the lips being this scared. I'm starting to bookmark my favorite meltdowns. I don't want to catch all, to count on my chickens, but I think we're going to get some gold here. We're already seeing a lot of depression, a lot of despair, politicos and others kind of spinning out, and so it's not time to mine salt yet, but we're getting there.
Sure. Delano, Ed Krasenstein, of course, those of you who are big X users, you will know Ed Krasenstein as just one of the worst, okay? And even he, as a giant lefty, said it's becoming more evident that Trump will win. America spoke. I may not like the outcome, but that's what America is about. Democracy is what is the most important thing here. We don't have that. Let's hope we can unify as a nation.
Well, at least he's not melting down like I've been hearing at Joy Reid's, saying Florida's a right-wing fascist state. And I mean, the number of times that we will see fascism, white supremacy, homophobia, don't care about women's rights over the next couple of days is going to be stunning. I would like to go back to something that Matt pointed out some time ago when he talked about Brad Wilcox and the marriage gap that we're seeing. And one of the things that I think, I hope over the next couple of years that we'll continue to do is see how the issues that happen in the home impact other areas of society. We know what happens in the home impacts the schoolhouse and the courthouse and sometimes the jailhouse, but also in the voting booth, because if you go by the major demographic groups, the highest to lowest marriage rates are Asian Americans, whites, Hispanics, and blacks. The Asian voting population is sometimes a little bit too small to count, but for white, Hispanic, and black, that is the exact percentage in terms of the order of support of Republican presidential candidates, and that's pretty consistent. So when you see that black vote starting to tick up a little bit, one, it's more significant than I think we realize, because you're talking about a lot of people who live in cities where there are no Republicans to vote for. So that muscle is never conditioned. I grew up in New York City. I mean, other than Rudy Giuliani, we didn't have many, times to vote GOP. If what we're seeing is that black percentage is due to the married black voters, then I think that's something that I would see as a very significant change in the populace. And then those black folks will should be ready to be called.
Yes or no?
Don't interrupt my video. White supremacy.
Of course, always, of course. I want to, if I could, just gloat for a little bit. We sit here today in Texas, the state of Texas, and I do a lot of work at the polls, and I hear a lot of trash talking at the polls. So now that, they have called Texas, we can soundly say, no, Kamala Harris isn't going to take down Texas. But I did spend some time at the polls today in Oaklawn, which for those of you who are not familiar, Oaklawn, I'll just put it this way. They have rainbow flags on their streets, okay? So think of that what you will. And I just wanted to point out from my mom, hey mom, I made the Dallas Morning News. They took some pictures of me. We went with some homemade signs, 10 out of 10, drug cartels endorse Kamala Harris. And we did another one, Venezuelan gangs heart Kamala Harris as well. And turns out we made CBS News. Take a look.
There is more on your ballot than the presidential and Senate races, a lot more, including 18 amendments if you're voting in Dallas County. And it can be overwhelming if you're reading them for the first time today. Our Lacey Beasley breaks down 3 big amendments that you need to know about. They're called the Hero Amendments. Tell us about them, Lacey.
Hey Karen, yeah, we're standing right outside a very popular polling location in Dallas. This is Oaklawn Library. You can see there is a line that's already wrapped around the building right now. We've been out here for about an hour. Earlier, when I checked in about an hour ago, they said they've already seen close to 400 voters here. I caught up with voters who are both for and against the Hero Amendments. And here's what you need to know. The Euro amendments would have a major impact and view on the federal ordinances. Proposition T would mandate.
You know, I did what I could to embarrass the fake news media. So, James, if in fact, again, I don't want to get too excited, but if in fact Donald Trump does take this, I mean, can we just like put fake news media in the coffin, bury them 6 feet under?
You mentioned that Dearborn precinct. Yeah. And, you know, I'm pretty sure this is the South Dearborn precinct that was won by Joe Biden by, I think, 88%. And just the spectacular collapse of the Harris campaign. This isn't just about Kamala Harris. It's about something larger. Donald Trump is a guy who's now performing historically well with Muslims, as well as Jews, as well as Latino men. The list is now going on and on and on and on. And whether he ends up winning tonight or at the end of next week or somehow doesn't win at all, this is already a crushing defeat for intersectionality, or that pride flag of a zillion colors. What we are discovering is that whatever becomes of Donald Trump, that whole pitch, which is basically ruled by flattery, has failed. You're seeing it across different demographics, across all these subcultures and identity groups. Identity politics is broken. The back of identity politics has been broken in America, and we have Donald Trump to thank for that.
Yeah. Do you agree, Delano?
No, wait. I think the left overplayed its hand. You know, now different coalitions are going to react to different parts of the identity, the anti-identity politics. For some it'll be race, for some it'll be obviously the gender ideology. So how you manage that coalition is going to be interesting, but when you see somebody, and I don't think we pause to think about this enough. This is the GOP. We're not that far removed from the George Bush years, right, in the Iraq War. And to think that the GOP could make this type of inroads among Muslim Americans is pretty fascinating to see, while becoming an anti-war party.
Right.
Is pretty fascinating to see. So the tectonic plates are shifting. Again, what this looks like as a governing coalition, I think remains to be seen.
Warren, what does that transfer of power even look like?
I would like to say something really quick about the death of identity politics.
Please.
I hear what everybody's saying, and I agree that the current coalition, the current way that the left has shaped its party, looks like it could be under serious stress. However, identity politics isn't going anywhere. All politics is at some level identity politics, and the question is, what identity is salient? Is it your race? Is it your religion? Is it your ethnos from another land? These are the things that matter to people. These are the things that deeply define them. And when you rearrange these coalitions, you can find new ways to understand the American experience and find new ways to share values across these things. But let's not forget, let's not pretend that these divisions necessarily just disintegrate and that these weapons disappear in the hands of Democrats. Yes, they may have lost their current formulation, and that gives us great opportunities to make inroads and reforge these alliances. But that doesn't mean that the Democrats will not continue to push this.
And I would just add to that, by extension, Republicans, we have to make sure Republicans don't help Democrats continue the next
Update.
Of racial pandering.
We have a.
Yeah, guys, I want to interrupt, but we're going to come back to this. I find your conversation fascinating, and I want to ask you guys a couple of questions. But first, let's go to Stu. We've got apparently a big
biggest call of the night so far. The first of our 7 swing states that we're going to decide the election. North Carolina goes to Donald Trump. Yes. Electoral votes, which brings him up to what, 231, I believe is the count we're at right now. We're getting closer and closer to 270, Glenn.
Is North Carolina really considered a swing state? Really?
It was really tight. 2020 was.
Oh, in 2020 was too.
Very, very close. The polling shows very, very close here. Barack Obama did pretty well in North Carolina as well back in the day. So it has been pretty much a swing state.
General opinion.
No. Don't mess up my stream. I'm not telling you until tomorrow.
Tell me now.
No.
The electoral votes in. Honestly, at this point,
I'll turn another light on.
I'll turn it off.
Okay,
Don't.
Thank you very much. Let me go back to the panel on stage 2. You guys are talking about a couple of things, and I'd just
I'll
like to
get on
get
the
your
phone and
reaction
ask Jeannie
to
what it
2
means.
different
She'll tell me.
things. First
Don't
of
mess
all,
up my live stream.
the New York Times, you were
Well,
talking
tell
about,
me.
and we're like this.
Be quiet.
Here too. You want
You
to
don't
believe it,
know.
or you don't believe it.
I know, I'm just not telling you now. Be quiet.
Why don't you tell me?
Because I'm not gonna. Now be quiet.
Being a jerk.
Be quiet.
Your opinions on Are they just doing what Bezos?
So, be quiet.
Are they seeing the writing on the wall? I mean, I don't think that there is any self-reflection at the New York Times or in the left media. They will always blame it on something. But is this a moment of crap, we're in trouble, let's lead the way and start calling things for Donald Trump, just to try to, I don't know, appease either the people who have abandoned them or just Donald Trump?
Yeah, I think that there is an element of desperation there, right? That they want to just cling to any sort of credibility that they think that they may have left. They're seeing the writing on the wall. They're seeing, as you mentioned, not just Jeff Bezos, but you have, the LA Times,
Yeah.
you have USA Today, you have all of these unprecedented non-endorsements where they would typically endorse a Democrat. So I think it's definitely, an element of, we don't want to be the last ones. We don't want to be wrong. And by the way, as we're talking, the New York Times just upped the Trump chance of winning to 91%.
Ooh, good.
Then let me ask.
GOP means grand old party.
And a couple of things came to mind.
Grand old
Yes, now let's let the TV talk. I told you.
A replay of 1920 where Woodrow Wilson had scared everybody to death. They saw what this was turning into, and the Americans were like, okay. And that's why progressivism became liberalism, because the Americans saw it. And then FDR came in 10 years later. Coolidge with Harding came in, cut taxes. I mean, it created the Roaring '20s.
Update.
Another call. Made a good one.
An update, make it a good one, yeah.
Update on the Senate here, Glenn. I thought we could look at this, and the Senate looks actually really, really good. Let me give you where we're locked into right now. Right now we have 48 seats for the Republicans locked and called. We also have 39 for the Democrats. Now, basically, the Republicans are out of easy ones at this point. They have 0 almost certain remaining. There's a couple for the Democrats they will still pick up most likely. But you see we're at a 48-41 Senate, and this is 11 total remaining. But you look at what is remaining, just hasn't been called. I refuse to call the Cruz race until the New York Times has to suffer through doing it. So far,
That's a dig at their rival newspaper.
CNN has called it. I think Decision Desk has called that race. That one looks good. Ohio also looks good. That would get you to 50. The Nebraska race is still uncomfortably close. With Deb Fischer. Montana, we don't really have a lot of the vote in Montana yet, although she is favored there. And then you start looking at other.
What was the spread? Hang on, with the president in Montana, do you know?
The president. Well, I mean, the Montana. We're just really early. We
haven't called it yet.
The vote there. Right now, Sheehy is up by 18 points.
Did you just say
What's
Sheehy? Yeah.
Let the TV talk.
Oh, okay. I thought we were talking the president's pronouns for a second.
No, not that. No. But also, if you look at Montana, he's up by 25. Trump's up by 25 or 29. So, Tester is going to outperform, the Kamala Harris in Montana. There's never any doubt about that. That split is important, though. But look, the Senate looks pretty good. Probably still blowable, but it would be really hard to do it. And I think that's where we are with Trump now. I mean, it's theoretically possible he could lose all 3 of these blue wall states.
Right.
But man, he's the heavy favorite in at least 2 of them, I'd say, and he may win all 3. And I will say this. Let me throw one more out there. To debate right now is Minnesota. I think you have to look at Minnesota as a state that Donald Trump might pick up. Now, I don't. It was very positive. I wouldn't say I guarantee. I think that is into the toss-up category.
That would be. I mean, that is just.
That's just fantastic. This is what I want more than anything. Honestly, what I really wanted is Donald Trump to win only because he won Minnesota. I wanted him to just be over 270 just so we could blame Tim Walz for the loss. But him losing his home state would just be delicious. That's just something I've lost. That's crazy. It's in the picture, and I would say it's a toss-up. I would ask this one. Glenn, one more update here real quick if we could. We have, this is where we stand right now, 231 electoral votes for Donald Trump,
I don't think he's gonna get there in New Hampshire.
Wow. Do you think that Harris will concede? Because I don't think
If I
that's.
were Trump, I wouldn't wait for her.
No, I wouldn't either.
I don't know if you remember, because much of that night was a blur.
When we got to the point in 2020, when it was pretty clear that something weird was going on. And that's before we even saw the 4 a.m. ballot drop off.
Yeah.
And I kept saying here on the air, in this room, he needs to come out and declare victory.
Yeah.
And then we thought, you and I decided to stay on until he speaks. He did. We didn't come out and declare victory, and he should have done that. When they say things like, well, Trump's going to declare victory before all the votes are counted, folks, every presidential election we've ever had has always had someone declare victory before the votes are counted, because it actually takes them a week to count all the votes in every congressional district. So that's just gaslighting.
Yeah.
That's not a real thing.
Yeah.
He should have absolutely, when he came out and spoke, 2, 3 a.m. Eastern, whatever it was 4 years ago, he should have absolutely declared
Yeah,
that.
he needs to do that tonight. But I don't think, remember what Hillary Clinton said in 2020. No matter what happens, Joe Biden should not concede. Because that just shuts all the doors of legal stuff, which I don't think they're going to give up. We have to talk about that probably more tomorrow. But let me go to Daniel. Daniel Horowitz, you have some perspective on Deb Fisher?
Yeah, so there's a couple of interesting things here. There's 60% in at this point, but Omaha, the liberal part, so there's basically Omaha and then the rest of the state. Omaha came in first. So for example, Trump's only up 10, but he won it by 19 last time, which this time he appears to be doing better. So what that means is Deb Fisher has actually finally flipped it, and what I would assume is she will remain that way the rest of the night and slowly grow. Now, I think it's worth mentioning that Osborne ran ads saying he didn't stand with Trump, and he ran to the right of her. So that's criminal that we have these red states and we have liberal Republicans that open up this opportunity for them to run to the right. But I think people understood that this Osborne guy would help the Democrats. Now, one interesting thing on the ballot initiatives for abortion. This is the one state where we have dueling amendments. So there's 434, which would limit abortion after the first trimester. It's winning with 51%. But then you have the one creating a right to abortion, 439, that's winning with 53.2. If the trajectory holds, I believe we will come out banning it after the first trimester and not creating a right. But just so the listeners know, pursuant to Nebraska law, if they both win, which is possible, the one with the most votes is the controlling law where they conflict.
That's a mess. That's just a mess. All right.
So back home in Iowa, one of my best friends, he's probably watching right now, Mike Pike, ran for state senate. And he was told an hour ago that he lost by 147 votes. So to get ready to concede everything else, okay, just a small business owner, put up his heart and soul into beating a Democratic incumbent in a new district. We got a call 30 minutes ago. How's that? It's like a monopoly card. You pick up the chance card. Calculation error in your favor. 47 votes. Wow. How crazy is that? And apparently we can't count votes in Iowa.
What is, because you guys were offset here for a little while when we were talking about the New York Times. What do you think the New York Times is doing? Is this a Bezos thing? Is this, you see the writing on the wall, let's not be the holdout here? What do you think happened? Oh, wait a minute. Let's savor that for just a moment.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
If you turn on MSNBC right now, they're freaking out.
Oh boy, what's going on the enemy media?
I'm not going to celebrate a Trump victory until the swing states have been called.
Yeah.
I'm not going to pop a champagne bottle. I'm still there's so much time.
exactly right. And by the way, we're getting pretty close in Pennsylvania. Maybe I'll do Trump the Weed for a second because there's that means that there is 172,000
Quiet, guys.
to be counted
Quiet.
still in the Philadelphia area. Even if Kamala Harris won 100% of these votes, that would mean that she would lead Trump by less than 8,000 votes across the whole state. But the whole state still has red counties such as Cambria County.
Thank you, Daniel Dees.
Missouri County.
Wow.
So I think, and I'm not making any calls here, not only is that Stu's wheelhouse, but this looks very good for Trump in Pennsylvania. If he wins Pennsylvania, I will start to feel a little more hope. A little.
You know what I mean?
That brings her to 187. It is now 231, 187. The threes are weaker.
Thank you very much. So we were just talking about, MSNBC and how do these, first of all, I don't believe there will be any self-reflection. I remember calling Chuck Todd. Remember, I was against Trump
Guys, quiet.
in 2016, and I called Chuck Todd and I said, Chuck,
Quiet.
I know everybody's celebrating on at NBC. Please let me explain why he won and who we on the other side really are, or you're going to make some of the grave mistakes that I made, and you'll make the situation much, much worse. I called all of the people that I, had in my Rolodex on who I could, talk to me and be reasonable. Not a single person wanted to talk about it. All they wanted to do was vent. There was no self-reflection at all. Here we are, 8 years later. They won't do it again. They will not accept that what they did led, really, to his win.
I have a question for you.
Quiet.
About Don Lemon and Chris Cuomo, who left CNN. They seem a lot more reasonable, a lot more open to listening to the other side. Is it really these individuals at these networks who are so ideologically driven and refuse to see what the other side is like? Or is it the networks and they're just doing their job?
I have not, neither network ever told me what to say. They didn't get involved in that. CNN was vicious in the control room on prove that. Where'd you get that? I mean,
You're talking as you're talking?
As I'm talking,
You're saying that in your
we had to tape. We were never live at CNN. They'd never let me go live except on Larry King. else. The door would open, they'd see me, not a word from anyone.
Most
So
people
like
can't tolerate that. They just can't bear that kind of
Can't do it.
attention.
Right.
I heard Chris Cuomo actually say one of the most interesting ways to describe Donald Trump. He was doing a video on Action. He said, you know, a lot of people think that everyone's voting for the fascist. They think he's a bad guy. They're voting for him anyway. And he said, no, they're hiring a top guy to do a dirty job, and that's it. And I was like, this is an interesting side of Chris Cuomo that I haven't seen before. Yeah. Oh, no, I don't. COVID. I think so. I was positive because he got COVID and he's still suffering effects from it today. He took ivermectin and he's better from it. And then he realized the nation media lied about ivermectin. Now, he'll tell his personal story. I don't know that he'll ever indict, verbally indict his brother because of family loyalty. But I think that if it weren't for his brother, I bet that he would red pill much further. I've been on his show debating him.
I hate to judge because people have said so many things about me. He's only saying that because he knows Connie or whatever. I think you guys know me well enough to know I don't really care. I say what I really believe. I don't know him, so I don't want to judge him on this, but the flip is so dramatic. Where I don't think Don Lemon's flip is that dramatic. When you saw him on with Elon Musk, he was the same guy. So I don't know. But I do know that I think it's mainly group things. And you're surrounded by the best people in the business.
Yeah.
You know the sponsors, what they want. You know, if you are not, the biggest thing I understand when you talk to somebody, it's like you're talking on the internet. They're not, you see that there's nothing happening behind their eyes. It's like shock. They don't.
They're thinking about something else that you're talking. Well, someone who's probably talking in their ear and they're doing something else and they're not actually thinking. You can actually tell that. A lot of us who've been on the side of being the ones conducting interviews, I think, notice it more when you see it in someone else. Because you can very easily have your prepared questions and ask them without listening and crafting your follow-up based on what person said. You can just ask your questions. And that's what they often do there. They don't have any interest in understanding the other person.
What are you doing?
So let me throw this out there. There's part of me right now is maybe I'm getting too high-minded.
What?
But part of me right now feels as if I don't really want everyone to change. I don't want them to take much because if Texas is going to go by plus 14, why don't you spend another, $100 million? Continue lighting your money on fire and telling me how, oh my gosh, we're going to win. I mean, I'm kind of looking for that. And then, but the only reason why I bring it up is press.
Election update.
Because if they don't care, if they would just humility, we could pull people back together enough to
Quiet, guys.
unite.
Be quiet. Donald Trump is winning, birdies.
We have a Senate race to call, and this was just painful for the New York Times. They dragged it out. A little inch of pain came out, but we can call Ted Cruz as a senator from Texas.
Yay, he won. Good.
$9 trillion of ad spending. Unsuccessful in this race. Do we also have Ohio ready to go? I mean, I'll tell you about it anyway, even if we don't have the
Cruz won?
Yeah, the senator from Texas.
This is a big win in Moreno. That's Ohio, the state, but this is actually the Senate race. Bernie Moreno defeating Jared Brown, which is a pickup for the Republicans. It gets them to 50.
Quiet, birdies.
That's a big one. That was, I would say, one of the swing states that was quite close, and Bernie Moreno was going to the Senate.
Quiet, birdies. Quiet.
Ted Cruz.
Oh, nice.
I just wrote, you're the man, praise the Lord. Actually, another happy point, the New York Times killed them to declare that. Anyway, okay. So, Stu, what do we have that we're looking for to be able to call Pennsylvania? And how close will we be when they do call Pennsylvania? If it goes to Trump.
Talk about it.
Pennsylvania.
Let Mom thought about it.
We are at, let's see, 81% of the vote in right now. Donald Trump is up by 3%, 51 to 48. That's close, still. There's about 200,000 votes.
It's good, if what Lee says is true, that we are looking at the red parts of the state will be counted. That's usually, they usually call.
Donald Trump in Pennsylvania. Flabbergasted all over.
Right. And how far would they be to how close would it be to 270?
I mean, even Pennsylvania is basically there. I mean, like, we haven't called Georgia yet. Really, it's just a matter of always happening with Georgia. Georgia is about 140,000 votes separating us, 51. So we haven't called that yet, but he would need that. So he would be Arizona, and then Pennsylvania would do it. I mean, he leads Michigan by 5 with about 42% of the vote.
Be quiet, you guys.
Wisconsin is a 3-point lead with 71% of the vote in. He looks good to me in all three of those all three of the blue wall states. They have voted the same way since, what was it, 1988? So it's been a really long time. They usually go the same way. He looks really, really good there. You never know what's going to happen with last-minute votes, and this is why we sit here and we look at all of them and sit up and watch all of them until they're actually called. But again, this looks good for Donald Trump in these states. Arizona, by the way, 53% of the vote in, still very close there. About 0.4% lead for Donald Trump. Arizona, but with 53% of the vote in, I wouldn't panic about that. If you remember Pennsylvania, people, of course, will remember Pennsylvania for Donald Trump looking like he had a big lead, and then a lot of vote coming in late on the blue side, and people very upset about that.
Is this Maricopa County that is in?
Remember, the opposite is true with Arizona. Arizona usually looks the opposite, where it looks like Democrats get a lead, and then Republicans come back. Just the way they count the vote there. So probably pretty good that Donald Trump is actually tied here. I mean, this is at least a lean Republican. I think all these swing states that are remaining, with the exception of Nevada, which we don't have really any data on at all yet, everything else so far looks like it's leaning toward Trump. There aren't a ton of massive blowouts. Like Georgia is one right now. We could call if we wanted to. It's basically there. The other three states you wouldn't necessarily call right now, but as Steve said, I think you'd be surprised on Pennsylvania. So we were surprised last time. So I think what we're seeing here is, and I said this on preparation this week, I did not think that we were going to sit here tonight with the seven decisive states and Tuesday and three, be down here and counting precincts in Pennsylvania. I mean, those two, when I was in my hotel room Sunday watching my Lions for the Packers on national TV. I didn't like that, I played hard. I played the credit. That's really good for life. But every commercial, and I mean every one, as I said earlier, it was, victories either help my daughter or victories only help my daughter. And when you're running that kind of messaging, like I said at the top of the show, that tells you they're not going after the same voters. They are trying to drive out people that are totally different would respond to a different electorate would respond to one message over the other. And if you go back to what I said back at 5 o'clock, I thought what we would see tonight is the margins in the states would be close, but the trend line would not be. And that is exactly what we are seeing. Okay, it is very clear that the message the Republicans ran on is the message well, the message Trump ran on and forced the Republicans to then own, okay, against their will. Okay, that energy is what is dominating the night, and then you're watching the birth of a new coalition be formed. Going back to what you said, they won't. You're too invested. It's a demonic cult. It's a religion, but they're going to have to completely repackage their message. If not, they're going to take. If not, you're looking at this being, as much as we kind of balkanize Serena with someone that still has a persona that can alienate people like Trump, you're looking at an 84 kind of a reassessment where it would take them several cycles, like 88, then into probably even without lost probate, probably still don't win that one. They would have to take a several cycle rebrand to dig out of the way it just happened. We were just talking about it. It was 1920. They scared the hell out of the Americans, but it took them 10 years
Republicans, and that's just confirms it for us, like they can think it, but like to just have that be their branding response. Because here's the thing, whenever you create a new coalition, whenever Hispanic men or black men vote Republican, and they do it for the first time, the hardest part is to do it for the first time. Yeah. It gets much easier the second time. You talk about that with the red hats. And so you end up with 45% of this election, and it's maybe 51 or 52. I think Ted Cruz has a 29-point swing or something like that with Latinos here in the state of Texas. Right? And so from his last race against Beto O'Rourke. Once you get the Republicans that won a border county here in Texas for the first time since 1892, almost entirely Hispanic. That's all. So the minute you can get people to cross over that subculture picket line, metaphorically, the first time, it gets much easier to do it next time forward.
So I want to talk about something else. I want to go to first to Hillary, and then I want to come back. I want to talk to you about the other big thing that we have that is fantastic. The press, you can only play it for so long. The money only goes so far.
What are you snacking on? No. I just wonder what you're doing.
telling you.
Yeah.
We and Joe Rogan and all of these other podcasters,
Yeah.
the audience sees them as friends.
Yeah.
And so that's what makes an impact.
Right.
I might like, Beyonce and say, oh, I love her music and everything else, but I don't think she's my friend.
Well, it's the
She's a
same
celebrity.
thing with Joy Reid or any of those people on the mainstream media. I think a lot of those people, they believe if their shows are doing well or they're
White dudes for Harris. You're not going to sleep, huh? It is midnight. No, I just want you to not mess up my video.
And hat tip, I want to make sure I give our colleague Daniel Horowitz credit on this, because I was about to post the same thing and saw he did it first. With this realignment we're seeing now, where Republicans are doing better in these urban areas, they're still performing.
Wow.
decisively. And you know,
That's
even
gonna
when
be
Steve
crazy.
actually gave him a map, I gave him a map and I tried to be optimistic, and I couldn't get Republicans past 219. Now, a lot of these are very close, but I'm just telling you, a number of Republicans look like they are losing. They're losing a few in New York. They might lose one in might be Steve's hometown, Miller Meeks. A lot of these are very, very close. And I think it's what Steve just said, that Republicans are swinging Philadelphia, New York, Chicago by 10 points. And in a competitive state like a Detroit, a Milwaukee, and a Wisconsin, it will get you that state. But it won't get you that congressional district. And conversely, they're receding in suburban districts. So they're going to have a problem keeping the House. Either way, this is going to be a nightmare because it's going to be determined by about 5 California seats that are going to take a week to count.
You know why you're laughing. I don't like you either. I'm losing friends here tonight. I'm losing allies.
I've got to give a little bit of Jeremiah.
When it comes to the House, they're supposed to be the ones that appropriate the money. Well, the money's been mismanaged by both Congress, but also by the executive branch, the administrative state for a long time. I think we need to audit all of the federal agencies in detail. The way that a couple of congressmen and senators do this once in a while, they'll issue a report that says this is the wasteful spending, this is what spending.
The joy is gone.
Elon Musk.
Every human reform movement
Tesla.
in history has been
Now
accompanied
let
by
the
some technological.
the guy that made
innovation
Tesla. Now let the video.
or
Give us on my
The
video.
New Testament church comes on the heels of Rome colonizing the world in one culture and paving roads and securing seaways, or the difference between Martin Luther and John Wycliffe is Johannes Cooper. And there's no way Donald Trump wins the election without Elon Musk.
Yeah.
No way.
And you know what?
Well, I mean, for several reasons, one of which is X. I mean,
Yeah.
we lose Elon Musk. I think the Germans, what was it, Der Spiegel, that came out and said he's target number 2. And I think that's absolutely true.
Yeah, and he could have stopped with X. He could have stopped there, and that would have been a lot to help Western civilization. But he went above and beyond that to highlight the issues that we're dealing with and to help elect Donald Trump. I mean, that's
huge.
You know why, right? That it wasn't just a matter of, oh, he thought that the media was lying to us, he thought that our country was verging on wokeness. This became personal for him.
It trains this kid.
Yeah, he trans his kid, he either lost custody of his kid or his kid went to court to change the name. And he's doing this not just to save our world, but to save other people from immigration and assault by losing his son. It actually, when I read that story and realized that this man loves his son so much that he's willing to spend his entire fortune, risk his entire reputation, so that what has happened to his son and his family doesn't happen to other people, it brought tears to my eyes.
I have to tell
Like,
you,
that is love.
I just saw an interview, I don't even know who was interviewing him, but I saw this interview that I've never seen anything like it before with him. He was asked, I can't remember what the question was, but it was something like, are you lonely? And did anybody see this?
I didn't.
And he said, you know, really how to express himself. He's, you know, I felt I was really offended when Tim Walz said, and he was jumping around like he was a freak or something. I'm like, since when is it you have?
The only thing that you can try to do is make fun of him for these dumb reasons, because what no one can deny is the kind of greatness he has. I mean, no one has run this many companies doing this kind of bold stuff at this level before. That's insane.
Yeah, it's
but
not.
The other thing is, don't you think that what he did, he initiated a commercial cultural movement that showed that statesmanship extends beyond the political sphere.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, he bought Twitter for political reasons.
Yep.
Sure, there are self-interested reasons in there too, but he has planted the flag and said, I mean, this was not a good business decision in many ways.
Yeah.
And he's saying, I am going to actually be a statesman. I care about what's going on in my country. And he just kept on doing it.
Well, it's like Donald Trump, also not necessarily a good business decision for him to get into politics.
Horrible.
And I mean, they have that in common.
So, you know, I look at what Elon Musk, did you hear what he announced this week? That he said that he's developing a way now to where his brain interface can be introduced, you know, it's like a sewing machine. It just takes this thing and just like through the skull and puts these, you know, these like antenna in your brain. He said you'll be able to do it almost as easy as like LASIK. So you'll be up and running. It won't be a big deal.
What's it for? Yeah, what's the purpose of that?
Oh, it's his brain. What do you call that thing?
This is
Neuralink.
Neuralink. So this is
Neuralink.
This is where the Elon Musk discussion takes a different
Takes a different tone.
Because
he
sounds like a lobotomy.
He is saying that it will be affordable for everyone. It will be easy to get, and it is the Borg. It's the singularity of man and machine becoming one. Never.
Oh,
Never.
I talked to my daughter who has cerebral palsy, and you know, she has horrible seizures again. She had brain surgery, and it worked for a while, and then it stopped. And now they're much worse.
Yeah.
She has very hard time communicating with people because she had strokes, and so her brain mapping, you know, brain just works like it's just all interstate highways. And because she had so much scarring on her brain, part of her language is over here, part of her language is over here, her memories are here, and all of the roadways are broken, okay? So it takes her a lot of work, and it's so sad to watch because she works so hard just to be able to
And she
speak.
knows that the highways aren't connected, and
Yeah,
she
she
wants
knows.
to
I mean,
connect them. It's so
yeah.
heartbreaking.
Yeah, she is at a totally functioning level.
Yes.
And I asked her, I said, honey, would you ever consider this, hoping that she would say no. I said, would you ever consider this? And she said, Dad, I know how much it would change and how easier my life would be. She said, but I know the Lord will heal me when I get to the other side. And I don't want any man to do that to me.
Yeah.
And that is, to me, I mean, I just sobbed for a week, but
Of course.
that
Profound.
that's
So
profound.
Oh.
But how many people, you're going to be convinced, because I've studied this for 30 years now. When it's cheap,
and everybody starts to get it, and you have the advantage of, I can access all of the information right now that you don't have. I stop you in business and everything else. How many people are going to accept that just because I've got to compete?
Yeah, I do wonder if Elon, as he kind of evolves and changes in his thinking, if he will also realize the dangers of the advancement of things like AI, which I think he already does in some ways for sure. But you know, he calls himself in the Tucker interview, he called himself a cultural Christian, which is what Richard Dawkins called himself too. And the more I think he moves into realizing that people are made in God's image, that we are separate and distinct from technology, plants, animals, and all of that, I hope that that also shapes his development of the technology.
So you know why he's doing Neuralink is the main reason is because he feels that AI will destroy mankind. It's not just getting off the surface of the earth because of global warming. He also believes mankind has to be off the earth by the time we have the singularity moment. And he said the only thing that will keep us from being eaten by these machines is if we can interface and keep up with it. And compete with it, which is terrifying. Let me go to stage 2 and spend some time with Sarah and what you guys are following over there.
Yeah, so the New York Times now is projecting that Donald Trump wins the popular vote by 1.1%. So again, take that for what it's worth, but you have the New York Times reporting that. I know James had something to add to your conversation about religion and technology. That's right up your alley.
Yeah, just obviously, you know, a huge outpouring of gratitude toward Elon Musk and the whole crew of super friends that he brought along with him and organized. You know, it wasn't just him who bought Twitter and turned it into X. He had a lot of support behind it. And, you know, I think that what we're looking at right now is tech kind of picked up the crown in the gutter of the right. And right now, as of right now, you know, Donald Trump, obviously a big guy, but tech has really moved to that power position on the right. And that's an opportunity. There's also a risk there. We just saw tonight the Church of Woke that they tried to spend 4 years turning into the established religion of the United States fail. People saw what they were doing. They sampled it out. They tried the DEI and the ESG and all the rest, and they didn't like it. They spat it out. Now is the time for us to recognize that the Church of Tech is not what should be replacing the Church of Woke. I know there's a lot of interest and even hope and kind of, you know, a lot of people on the right just wanting to kind of give everything to these guys who wrote in with their money and their cool tech. Don't fall on your knees and worship them. You can appreciate them as the human beings they are, and should be a return of politics, should be a return of governance, of people really rediscovering that we have a constitution and we have a rule of law, and when we put our heads together, we can solve practical problems and build on a foundation of rock and not a foundation of sand. The era when, you know, intellectuals told us what to do and ideology ruled everything, that's behind us now. Intellectualism doesn't solve our problems down at the soul level. Americans are right to realize that we live in a spiritual world now, and that spiritual authority is what people are thirsting for. You got to look somewhere other than the material world for that, though. You can't look at tech in the same way that you can't look at woke. And if we have that kind of perspective, then it's really going to help us be able to use those tools wisely to strengthen our form of government, strengthen our way of life, and ultimately preserve our humanity itself.
Let's go back to Elon Musk, because I think he kind of embodies what James is talking about here. And I want to get back to kind of the point that we were touching on earlier, which is, you know, you have all of this money that is being invested in these elections. And honestly, in Elon's case, I don't even want to say in the election necessarily, because his was a little bit different. He tweaked it. It was about supporting a pledge to support the Constitution, not necessarily the election. But Oren, what kind of standard do you think that's? I know the left will call it dark money, because whenever it's money going to a Republican or someone who supports the Constitution, it all of a sudden becomes dark money. But what is the standard that you see being set here?
I think the shift we're really noticing is the awareness of the power of kind of the oligarchs, right? We have George Soros on the left, and this is the boogeyman. This is what everybody points to. He's funding everything, and they're right to point this out. It's a very dangerous and deleterious effect on our electorate. But ultimately, we're also seeing that the right is now moving in this direction. Donald Trump himself is a billionaire. Elon Musk is credited with so much of this election. Think of what the Democrats could have gotten away with if Twitter was not free, if you could not share this information, if the Democrats did not know ahead of time that there was a free and fair platform that was going to share out any of the shenanigans that happened during this election. That is a chilling effect on their attempt to go ahead and do the things that they're doing. But as James is pointing out, you have Mark Andreessen, you have David Sachs, you have all of these other people who are involved in shifting the landscape on the right. And it's this battle of money power, where the power is not just in the formal government, but we're starting to recognize that it's the control of the media, it's the control of corporations, it's control of many things that are not directly involved in the electoral process that ultimately bring serious results during the electoral process. And that is a mindset that we really have to understand. It isn't maybe the best ultimately for what people understand as democracy, but it is also a reality that's going to continue going forward.
Yeah, I think another piece of that is the RNC. You see what happens, the difference between the RNC being run by a Romney McDaniel, and of course you see a Laura Trump and Michael Whatley. And so just to add to Oren's point here, Delano, Michael Whatley, I know this is a couple hours old now, but he did tweet out that they had a legal victory in Pennsylvania. They said Center County officials were planning to stop counting ballots throughout the night. Well, it turns out that's a violation of the state law, and so all they had to do was threaten to sue, and officials agreed that they would continue the count as requested.
There you go.
You've got this swarm of attorneys that they've brought into all of these swing states watching and threatening to sue, and that seems to have made a lot of difference too.
Yeah, and I think what we're seeing this time around, a lot of people liken Trump's victory in 2016 as sort of a middle finger to the establishment. This is the second hand being raised at this point. And I think a lot of people are actually drawn to that. And again, my mind is thinking, okay, if things hold, what does this mean for the Republican Party? And Steve brought up the role of conservative Christians, evangelicals, and where they sort of play and where they are with this new coalition. I understand why some evangelicals said, look, Trump moved to the left on abortion or some other issues, and we're not comfortable with that. I respect every person, however they want to exercise their right to vote or not vote. But when it comes to some of these issues, particularly on family policy, on abortion, obviously it's a state issue, but the president has a tremendous bully pulpit. And if every time a state looks to enact stricter abortion laws, a heartbeat bill, if he's constantly saying, oh no, that's too tough, we need to give it more time, then you are going to have evangelicals who question whether they have a place in the party. When it comes to IVF, wide open policy sort of terrain. Even when it comes to issues of marriage and family, things that have been decided, but again, you can use the bully pulpit. And I'm not sure whether Trump is going to use his bully pulpit in ways that social conservatives want, because honestly, and we've learned this from Republicans over the years, the good life is more than just about a roaring economy and nice looking GDPs. Like the good life is about how people live their lives. It's about family and friends and community. And I think again we're at a point where it's like, okay, what are these new coalitions going to want? Right? Can you have a party that is open to both your most conservative evangelical pastor and Caitlyn Jenner?
Jenner.
Quite a big tent.
Jenner.
Is
Okay.
what- Yeah.
Can you actually have that? And on the issue of particularly like gender ideology,
Right.
what does that look like? Now for many of us, we'll say tear the whole thing out of the culture root branch.
Mm-hmm.
But my fear is what conservatives will say is, well, get boys out of girls' sports, get boys out of girls' locker rooms, and then we're done and we can leave the rest to the states. And I don't think social conservatives are going to take that lane down.
I will say, Donald Trump's part of his platform is eliminating gender ideology from all levels of government that he can, and also eliminating any sort of transitioning, cross-sex hormones, gender surgeries for children. So that is part of his platform. Now, I get your point, like whether or not he actually follows through with all of that is another piece of it. Daniel, I know you want to chime in.
Look, I waited till after midnight Eastern time to bring this, but we talk about D's and R's all night.
Don't you do it.
But there are the C's. There are the conservatives, and I think we do have to recognize that, hopefully if Trump wins, this is a reprieve, but Republicans still suck. And, I'll just say, look, it was very clear in Florida we were going to be victorious against abortion there. Yet when Trump was asked about it today, he refused to talk about it.
It looks like we will win against abortion, probably in Nebraska and South Dakota. We had a movement against it in South Dakota, spent some money. In Missouri and Montana, it's looking not good, but only by a few points because the Republican governors refused to touch it. Had they campaigned against it, there's no way we wouldn't have gotten a few extra points given the voter registration edge. So my point is, no matter what, we have our work cut out for ourselves. The Republican Party has not changed, not at an elected level.
Gotta be so negative all the time. Daniel is our stew of stage 2. So you know how, the stew of stage 2, I've renamed you, Daniel. So you know how we have that little alert, the little ding for whenever Stu is calling races. I would ask the control room, next time, I want a little alert, a special alert for wellness check on mainstream media, because they are taking this, as you might expect. Let's play Joy Reid over on MSNBC. Watch.
On this said numerous times, is that you have a state where you've got a 6-week abortion or a 12-week abortion. I think there might be 12 weeks.
Yep.
But it's a state where women lost their reproductive rights, where there was a very heavy push to get women to focus on not putting in place, re-electing, putting back into the White House the person who was responsible for taking those rights away and restoring them. But that message obviously was not enough to get enough white women to vote for Vice President Harris, a fellow woman. This will be the second opportunity that white women in this country have to change the way that they interact with the patriarchy. And, God bless Shannon Watts, who was trying to have that conversation. But if people aren't receptive to it, and if people vote more, party line or more on race than on gender and on protecting their gender, there's really not much more that you can do but tell people what the risks are and leave it to them to do the right thing.
Right, because it couldn't possibly be, guys, it couldn't possibly be that instead of picking race or gender to vote on, they were voting on what they were watching around them. They were voting on the economy. They were voting on their children being less safe because they're watching the Laken Rileys of the world, the Jocelyn Nungareys of the world be murdered in cold blood by illegal immigrants who came here under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's watch. I mean, the audacity of this woman to claim that white women had an opportunity to change the way that they interact with the patriarchy, and yet they chose to vote based on race rather than gender, is just, these people should never be taken seriously again, James.
Well, this is what I'm talking about, the end of rule by
Right.
flattery.
Yeah.
This is the irony of intersectionality is that for every identity group that you give some sort of flattering, you can be whoever you want and we'll support you and cheer for you. But guess what? The flip side to that is not only do you have something to be proud of no matter who you say you are, you have something to be ashamed of too. And so every one of those identity groups, is sort of experiencing the dark underbelly of that ideology, which is actually you're a bad person too. And when people look around and they say, actually, no, there are bad things happening to me, and we're going to vote based on those.
Yeah, Delano, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, one, I'll give Joy Reid this. It seems that she's gotten so mad she took off Donald Trump's old toupee. And I think that's for the good. I think she looks a lot better this way. But the other thing is that the people who talk the most about the right being racist have no problem weaponizing race as long as it's against white people.
Right.
And this is why MSNBC and CNN are not honest brokers when it comes to these conversations. The other thing is that I think political pundits who do not recognize the power of party ID, to me, should not have jobs speaking in public. Because they blame 53% of white women voted for Trump in 2016, but that's a similar percentage of white women who always vote Republican. So it is incredibly difficult to sort of detach a person from their normal voting habits and then turn them in a different direction. So this notion that where you presuppose that all white women should just vote for, women's rights, which to them is just always abortion, is such a silly idea. But I'm glad to see that they're taking it rough. I hope that they will have some sense of self-awareness and self-reflection. But I'm not bullish on that.
Well, I would just say it couldn't happen to a more deserving group of people. I keep posing the question on my show, is this going to be the final nail in the coffin for DEI at government levels, right? Because Kamala was the ultimate DEI hire, wasn't she? I mean, she really hadn't accomplished much. No offense, but not a lot going on up there, always word salads. And so you look at all of these DEI hires within the Biden regime, and you look at the Rachel Levine, and you look at Karine Jean-Pierre, and you look at Kamala Harris, and you look at Sam Brinton, yeah, thank you. And you look at all of these DEI hires that it's just gone disastrously for them to have Kamala to stage a coup to put their DEI, their ultimate DEI hire up on the platform and have this end not well for them. Can we finally just say, you know what, maybe DEI was not a great idea?
Well, we can't. The reason is that it's literally illegal.
Woke
Most
stuff.
Conservatives don't understand even
Oh my God.
says in the United States civil rights law right now. It says that any
Yeah, you're messing up my video.
groups and their outcomes has to be basically based on the system. That has to be the default assumption. And when you have that written into law, it's not new, it's not just part of wokeness. It's back in Griggs versus Duke Power in the 1970s and then ratified by the Republicans in the Civil Rights Act in the 1990s. And so this is going to continue to be on the docket. Now, we may see this be dialed back when it comes to prioritizing and pushing it to the front for a little while in certain candidates, but it's going to be ingrained in law and will continue to reflect itself in all of our organizations and all of our government apparatus.
Daniel, you look like, Daniel's over here like, wow, ooh, ah, what do you think?
So look, I refuse to make a prediction before the election, but
Hold on. Is this positive news?
This is positive news.
Okay, I'll allow it.
Maybe the last piece of positive news for me this night. So I just said one thing. I said, look, whoever wins Northampton County in Pennsylvania will be the president, just because I identified that as the tipping point. And Erie would be the second one. Trump has won both of those counties. So I think it's lights out.
Guys, again, I'm kind of cautiously optimistic. I'm feeling a little bit of a tinge of the PTSD from the last time around. How are you feeling, James?
Yeah, we're having flashbacks.
Let's face it. I mean, we see the trend lines. We see the lead that Trump has here. Not calling it at this point is begging the question at best, and at worst, opening the door to those shenanigans that none of us want to see.
How much are you saying that because you're just tired and you want to go to bed?
About 30%.
What do you guys think? How do you feel about it?
I mean, I feel pretty good in terms of.
Should I feel better? I feel like I can't let myself get there.
I'm the type of guy I like to see triple zeros on the clock before I start to celebrate. So.
Right.
Yeah, well, one of the things I was just going to say that I think is an open question. I'm curious what Glenn and Steve and others think about this. Is, with Trump kind of bleeding some of the white suburban voters, but clearly netting more minorities in urban areas that allow him to presumably win this, are those new minority voters going over to other Republican candidates or only Trump? Because I'm seeing some weakness in Republican races elsewhere.
Yeah, let's see if Glenn wants to answer that after we give this election update.
Yeah, let me go to Stu first with the election update. What do you have, Stu?
Well, we have an update in New Mexico, where the state has now been called for Kamala Harris. That's 5 electoral votes. Gets her to 209. So 231 to 209 is our count right now. We also have some interesting stuff in the Senate. I know, obviously the presidential race is the top of the ticket and kind of the thing everybody's thinking about. But there's a path here for maybe 55 senators in the Senate for Republicans. Right now, it's interesting because you look at those 3 blue wall states where right now it looks like, these are not called, but it looks like Trump has a small lead in all 3 of them.
Would that take him to 270? Would those 3 take him to 270?
Way past.
Okay, so here, I just was with the staff out in the think tank area where everybody is watching every county and everything else. 2 of these states, Georgia and Pennsylvania, and I think Wisconsin is getting close. They're at 93%, and they're stuck at 93% of the counting. There is no reason. What I think they're doing, I just sent a note to somebody. I think they are stalling on these things because they don't want to say 270. And if they start to say, you know what, it's just too close to call tonight, we're going to start tomorrow, President Trump must declare victory. he needs to declare victory, because this is.
Let me
this
jump.
is,
Let me jump
you know,
on
Sarah just said I'm getting a little
YouTube.
flashback PTSD here. There's no reason Georgia hasn't been, none. Pennsylvania, maybe there's a reason. From what I understand, though, they've counted all of the blue areas, or at least the vast majority of the blue. It's really red remaining.
Jay Cohn of the New York Times said that for Kamala to win any of these 3 states, she would have to surpass Joe Biden's 2020 turnout in Milwaukee, Detroit, and Philadelphia.
And it's not gonna happen.
And she's
It's
not,
not gonna happen.
she's underperforming Biden.
Wow. So this
We are seeing.
this
we
looks
are-
like
We
victory.
are getting close to the time. If they don't declare this pretty soon, we're getting dangerously close to the theft of this election.
Yes, we are.
So this reminds you more of 2020 than it does 2016 when we fell asleep and we woke up to good news.
Oh, yeah, if they don't declare tonight on those 3 states, we're gonna wake up tomorrow and we still be counting, or it will go the other way.
Should absolutely come out and declare victory. They don't have a path. There's no point anymore.
What does that do? If he comes out and declares victory, does that change anything? How does it help him?
Actually, it further marginalizes mainstream media, demonstrates we've moved past you.
Yeah.
You're irrelevant, you don't get to make the calls
But
here.
does it affect anything?
The average person hates the media, doesn't care.
It does affect, once you declare victory, it cements it in the minds of people, okay?
I'm afraid it's gonna cause chaos.
Well, it's going to cause chaos, but you know,
Either,
it'll
I guess
more
either
chaos.
way, yeah.
More chaos, you know, this is why I think, didn't Al Gore declare victory in 2020?
CNN called Georgia.
They called Georgia
CNN did,
for?
for Trump.
It would be shocking if they did it the other way.
Well,
Yeah,
you
that
never
would be-
know.
I know, that would be
You never
2020
know.
flashback.
Okay.
You really don't know, do you? I mean,
No.
who knows? I feel like if they're gonna declare Donald Trump the winner, they're gonna do it at like 317. That's exactly why if they don't want to give him, it's either the steal is on or deny him a mandate, that kind of a thing. And exactly what Steve just said, do it at 3 a.m.
Delay allows for any kind of excuse to come up, you know.
Oh,
The
yeah.
more time it goes
I mean,
on, the more they can say, well, we're suppressed over here, or this happened over here.
If you are a business person and you know you're dead and dead in the water, you don't want to say we're dead in the water until you've exhausted, until you've met with everybody and said, is there anything that we can do here?
Yeah.
And that's what's happening, and they have the middle of the night to do that.
I think too, there's a motivation from the media's perspective. They don't want the thing that happened to Fox to happen to them. They don't want to be responsible for that call of the big state that everyone's holding out hope for, right? Because everyone on MSNBC's audience, if they call Michigan right now, they're going to get pissed not at Donald Trump. They're going to get pissed at MSNBC.
What has to happen though is, and this is where it's critical for the people like you, Stu, honestly, to go and take a break, go back in and look at the counties, because you can
I'll be right back. Leave me alone. Cannot believe. All right. Trump.
You gonna stay?
Yeah,
No, leave me alone. Keep watching the
it's
TV.
interesting looking at the landscape of
I had to
things
put the
because
audio
I
on my
realize the houses,
thing.
we're still looking at that shakeout. But,
Sorry.
you know, you've got News Nation that has already called it for Donald Trump. You've got, obviously, they're using Decision Desk HQ. It almost feels like if there was a play for them to stop it and somehow.
I'll be back soon,
So
Mom.
I'll just say for
By
the
the time I
election,
get back,
okay? If there was some sort of
if it
play,
ends, if it's over, just turn
every
the TV off.
single outlet
I'll be back in a little while.
continues saying Donald Trump has taken it.
Enjoy the
It's just
TV.
that
Congratulations,
play
Trump won.
just dwindles
Trump won.
less and less as the time goes on. Each time a mainstream media outlet, or just an outlet generally speaking, actually says what we all are seeing happening before our very eyes.
Yeah, that established media has been hanging on for dear life for a couple election cycles now. Ironically, it was Donald Trump himself, his very existence, that gave them the opportunity to remain on top of the information waterfall for America. And those things, it's going to take some getting used to. Elon Musk said it himself, "You're the media now." Nice piece of rhetoric, but lining up ever closer with reality as time goes on.
Yeah.
Well,
Go ahead, Arn.
the question becomes, how do you concede to a fascist? Right? They've spent the entire time calling Donald Trump the second coming of Hitler. He's going to strip women of the vote. He's going to throw everybody in jail. He's going to destroy his enemies. He's going to, put everybody in camps. This has literally been the narrative. Kamala Harris straight up called him a fascist. What do you say? Oh, sorry, I guess we just live under Hitler now. Everybody go watch Netflix, right? Like, you are in a credibility crisis. The entire media has spent years and years saying this man is the end of America, the end of democracy, an existential threat to our way of life. And now they just say, well, I guess he's in charge. Like, you either do something radical, and it feels like there just is not a level of energy for the left to go chimp and burn things down. It feels like they don't have that. And if you don't do that, then it's just clear you never believed any of that, and you spent all of your credibility just constantly playing this Radio Rwanda for Americans, trying to get them to harm each other. That should be a death knell for the legacy media.
Which is why they need to be held to proper account, Delano, because what Arn is talking about, it's so true. They're in such a predicament that this, again, I understand Elon, I agree with him, you're the media now. I think there's just so much power in him purchasing X and using it to spread free speech. Look at where we're at now. But they need to be held to proper account for all of these lies that they spewed, for the vitriol, for the hatred, for the division that they sowed within the American population. Thank God that it looks like we're overcoming that, but they still need to be held to proper account.
And I think the citizenry will hold them to account when CNN's numbers start to dwindle and MSNBC and all the other legacy media outlets lose influence. Because one of the things that's incredibly difficult to attain and even harder to maintain is credibility, right? And when you lose that, even as a media institution, now there's only three of you, you can say, well, it can't go but so far. But when 1,000 flowers bloom, whether in podcasts or new media, social media, different social media platforms. Now I was like, okay, I don't even have to listen to CNN. And not only do I not have to listen to CNN, I can mock CNN. I can mock MSNBC. I can look at how patently ridiculous these people are. They don't know anything. They don't talk to real people. They lie constantly. They gaslight. They say, Kamala Harris is for free speech. And I'm thinking, well, 4 years ago, if you said COVID started in a Wuhan lab, that was a conspiracy theory. You get kicked off of Twitter. So I think the way that Americans en masse are abandoning these platforms, and only the most scared and neurotic and anxious, all the kids at Georgetown Public Policy School, that they are probably tuned into MSNBC, biting on their nails and petting their comfort squirrels. But the rest of Americans are saying, look, I'm not beholden to you guys anymore. You guys don't have power over me. And I think that's one of the best things to come out of this election.
Yeah, I totally agree. Daniel, I know we're going to go back to the Stage 19 panel, but you have an update?
Very big update. I can't call it because it's not official, but good news on the House front, Pennsylvania 10. This is Scott Perry. Remember, most of these marginal districts are pretty liberal Republicans. Scott Perry, a former Freedom Caucus chair, Democrats really gunned for him. This is the Harrisburg-based suburban district. and Scott Perry appears to be on his way to actually holding on. So it will turn out that Republicans held every seat, will likely flip 2 House seats in Pennsylvania, and very likely will defeat Senator Casey and flip the Attorney General seat. So I must say, while we have some uneven results depending on the state, the investments that were placed into Pennsylvania going for broke there really appear to have paid off.
Yeah, so let's go back to Stu. Stu, what do you feel like? Wait, hold on. Where are you? Did Glenn?
I'm not in Glenn's seat. Glenn has
Glenn
abandoned
left.
the building.
Glenn left. Stu, let me just ask you, how does it feel that we seem to be the last ones standing? Anytime we have the special,
Yeah.
Glenn bails and goes to sleep.
Yeah, Glenn's got sleepy time. You know, this is Glenn's party animal lifestyle at whatever age he's at these days. Here we're talking about a person who was the life of the party, I think, at some point before I knew him, and now is gone immediately. Yeah, it's funny to watch him because he was. It's interesting. Because I remember I've been through a lot of elections with Glenn. The first election I did with Glenn was 2000. So this is our 7th presidential election I've done with him. And I'm trying to remember the last time he was happy. I mean, it's been a lot. I guess it was 2016, kind of. I mean,
Well, maybe it's because you're the black rain cloud, and you can't just let him be happy. Maybe it's you, Stu.
That's true. It's not an unfair comment, I will say. But this was a good night. I feel like there is that real hesitance among people to like kind of celebrate it, but like there's just nowhere to go for Joe Biden or / Kamala Harris at this point. You are at a situation where like we're watching.
We did it.
A historic
Congratulations.
moment. I mean, we've seen this only once in history where a president
Yeah, I know, I want to go out and ring my bell, but I don't want to look at my good name.
You are looking at a president. I mean, I'm looking at the Senate here, and I was telling you this as you were finishing up there, Sarah.
I've got the latest votes on those, by the way.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, tell me where we're at. I have 52 if Montana comes through. But the possibility of Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Nevada all on the table right now. Arizona maybe a little bit on the fringes of that. You could be looking at 56 seats here.
You could be. I mean, the latest vote totals on the Senate seats, Rogers leads in Michigan, the Republican, by over 163,000 votes with 67% reporting. Hovey in Wisconsin leads by 75,000 plus votes with 88% reporting. McCormick leads in the Republican in Pennsylvania by 88,000 plus votes with 94% reporting. And then in Arizona, Gallego leads by 109,000 votes with 51% reporting. So the
Trump did not take the stage yet, right?
Arizona by about 5.
All right, well,
Barry Lake is running about 6.
I'll probably be back about the time he's done. If he takes the stage and it's over, just turn it off. If not, leave it on. And leave the volume up because again, I'm sharing this video. Where's the remote control for the TV? Where's the remote control for the TV?
I don't know, you had it, Joe.
All right, so keep the volume. I'm live streaming for these people.
Yeah, that'll be 57.
So let the TV tell the stories. Keep the volume on the higher side.
Why don't you just
Normally,
Are you gonna let the people listen to the thing? You're gonna talk over them.
Yes.
Don't interrupt the video.
I mean, the
You did
story
it.
of the night is,
Congratulations.
yeah, the Senate looks better, right? That's great. The story of the night is Donald Trump just persevering over his critics, finally. I mean, I just keep going back and thinking about the last really 6 years, say, of my life, and all the people I've met and worked with to really, to build a movement, to work towards this moment, right? In different jobs, to find a realigning coalition. And over again, it was sort of like, no, Trump's terrible, right? He's also attacked on the right. This isn't gonna work. This isn't gonna work. This isn't gonna work. We've driven some people that we used to know mad, right? Just crazy with TDS, et cetera. And everyone came, and here we are. This is the redemption arc. I mean, he's going to walk into Washington, D.C. with what used to be called a mandate.
It's really impressive. You know, this is a dumb piece of analysis, but I'm going to say it anyway. Like, if you get shot in the middle of a speech, you should freaking win. Yeah, and I know that is like not.
Well, I think that's what's happening.
It's what's happening. I'm sorry, like when that sort of thing happens, and you have that not only just getting shot, but having that moment after you get shot, where you stand up and you say fight. The idea that he would lose after that, it just.
There is no poetic justice if somehow Kamala Harris, who's gifted the nomination after that occurs, somehow wins that race.
And it happens in Pennsylvania, as a friend sent me earlier. I mean, what poetic justice is that, right? It happens in Butler, PA, in rural, small town Pennsylvania, is where this miraculous moment happens, which by the way, as people pointed out, every narcissistic politician would dream of that moment, right? You can't script it in a movie, it would seem too ridiculous. And what that really happened to this guy in PA, and I think you're right. I mean, I think that people don't talk about it because the media doesn't want to talk about it. Yeah. But that broke something, and it broke an obstacle that was cultural, that was mental, it was, a block put on everyone by this tyrannical, oppressive Borg that we have to deal with, and something snapped that day.
And think about, for a second, the reaction to that moment. You have a situation where Donald Trump is shot on stage. He's then almost murdered again at a golf course. Mm-hmm. And their reaction to it is to call it Hitler nonstop for the last 3 weeks of his campaign.
Almost like it was code for don't miss next time.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, I came to the conclusion, what else could it be other than they wanted it to succeed next time? I don't know.
At the very least, it is such a brazen disregard for the safety of your opponent that your will to power, your thirst for power, just has no regard for the humanity of the person you're running against, which is indicative of, again, a broken social compact where you're at the point in the divorce now where you're going to go through with it, and you're saying and doing the things to the other party that you thought of before, but you didn't because you thought reconciliation was still on the table. And once it's not, now you want to be done with it. Now you want to pretend and act as if you were never married and it was the worst mistake you ever made. And you're like, you came to drop bombs. And that's the stage of this that they are at over there now.
And think about this too, where like they also did this to RFK Jr. Mm-hmm. When he was running for president, they took away his Secret Service protection. They did everything they could to try to end this campaign in a way that nobody that's sane wants to see. And nobody deserves this more than them. No one deserves this loss after they tried to convince us that we were supposed to surgically alter our children to the trans gods. All of the things, what they did with the student loan catastrophe, where they just broke the Constitution over and over and over and over again. Let us back.
And I think they've called Wisconsin.
You're looking for your iPad. We're on the air.
I know.
This is Hall of Fame worthy.
Wisconsin has been called.
Wisconsin has been called?
Wisconsin's been called.
No.
Fox is called Wisconsin.
Yeah, I want the New York Times to call it. I don't know what it is. I want them to suffer through every one of these freaking calls. They call them
just think how much they hate it.
Oh, they hate it.
This is so great.
Oh, I remember. So back in 2008, we were doing the show. We're doing this very, very similar thing, except with much lower production quality. And we're in that little studio, if you remember, in Rockefeller Center.
Yeah.
And I remember Glenn did the same thing where he left before the show was over. And it was myself and Dan Andros sitting there and analyzing these results. And I remember Barack Obama winning. Obviously, he was going to win that election. And I remember walking through the streets of New York after that, going back to the hotel. And people were in the streets cheering and screaming. And this is the exact opposite of that moment. Times 10.
Everybody in New York right now is that woman in that yellow coat going, it's so great.
It is fun.
So great.
It's fun. All right, are we gonna show up tomorrow?
I will be landing
Yes.
about 45 minutes before the show. So
okay.
I do want to say this. I said this to the staff just a minute ago. You not only are witnessing history, but this staff and everybody who's on this side changed history. This audience changed history. We are now charting a new course, and it's, I think, such a clear victory. They're going to have hard time, trumping something up. They're going to have to go after him. Remember the sentencing for Donald Trump still to come. So we have a tough 72 days, but we accomplished what we set out to do. Donald Trump
is the president. This is an incredible night. Now I'm gonna go crash.
Okay. Thank you. Try not to do that literally, especially in a plane. That's always a bad idea. Isn't it my chair? Oh yeah, here we go. Glenn's iPad. Everybody, I almost forgot it again. All the time. You nearly forgot it twice?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, it is what an amazing night. I will say, there's another thing I want to bring up in this moment. And again, this is over, right? Like, and I don't think there's any other path. I will wait for the New York Times. I'm going to leave this one page on my screen just to see them suffer through it. But, and I mentioned this a million times on my show and probably on everybody else's show, but just Afghanistan was enough. If there was no inflation, if there was no border crisis, if there was no problem with transing kids, if none of that occurred, just Afghanistan was enough for them to get thrown out of power. That these people would never, ever be anywhere near the White House again. And the fact that, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden are going to get removed from that office and be hopefully, I guess you cross your fingers, you never know what they're going to try here. But if they're going to be gone, there's at least a little bit of justice that comes to all of those troops that work so hard to try to make Afghanistan into something that, an effort that we could all be proud of. So many people laid their lives down. The fact that these people would be rewarded for that was a disgrace from the beginning, and thank God it's not going to happen.
I mean, look, the next thing to talk about is, and this is why, this is just an astounding night after all these years, is the next step for those people who are responsible is accountability. The first accountability that you'd see is get the hell out of the White House. You're done. You're fired. Yes. And the next step would be looking at all those generals and everyone else in that defense complex, right? With a transition team that I think is, the Death Star has been fully operational for a while. They're going to come in and say, no, we are actually going to clean house. All these kids online have this great meme about the crystals. You know about the crystals? The crystals are, we're going to put you for 10,000 years in the crystals.
Okay.
Kind of like in Superman 2, where, the bad guys are stuck in the...
Superman 2 was fantastic.
Yeah. So they're stuck in the crystals. There's many interpretations about what it means, but it basically means that's the punishment, right? Well, prepare the crystals, right? Because he is coming back. There is going to be a team with him that is going to look for accountability and that understands that accountability is needed. And there is no way out. Talk about the only way out is through. There is no way out for Donald Trump at this point if he makes it through 72 days with this mandate, but to look at those departments, those agencies, those people who have never left office, who are unaccountable, who are unelected, and to clean those agencies out. No way around it.
What I kind of see here too, as a guy that was on the front lines of the pushback against COVID, is we've come full circle on that front too. The event that destabilized his presidency, the event, a combination of his own failure and then what was done to him at the same time, and his presidency never recovered from it. And now we sit here 4 years later, and in many respects, it is a coalition. Those of us, there was all kinds of people. I saw you guys had on Jeffrey from Brownstone today. Okay, there's this collection of a lot of us who just, Peter McCullough, who lives here in Dallas, Joe Rogan. A lot of us who didn't know each other previously, and some of us who still don't, and this cross section of truth seekers just kind of organically emerged. This loose affiliation of X-Wing fighters taking on the Death Star here to push back on that narrative. And if you look at basically the coalition that Trump has assembled, aside from the historic turnout of Hispanics, and Stu, I really think tonight the number one paradigm shift is Donald Trump winning a resounding victory courtesy of historic Hispanic turnout by running on open deportations. I think what that will do for the future of messaging on the right, it takes every establishment swamp trope we were fed since McCain, Kennedy, and when George W. Bush called us all xenophobes 20 years ago, and just flushes an entire generation. Thoughts and prayers, pour one out, Doughboy, for the GOP consultant industry. All right, they got hit hard tonight with that result. But beyond that paradigm shift, the rest of this coalition, and if you look at the people that came that broke late for him, that bro dude brigade that took that Rogan, that is the COVID pushback coalition. And that's kind of, I mean, that, you know, and a lot of us thought, and, you know, I know Daniel's still over in studio too. I'd love to hear what he says because he was involved on that with me as well. We even asked ourselves at times, or because who knows, are we going to ever come out of this? We could have elections again, you know? And we asked ourselves, is this like the third party? Is this like the alternative to the GOP, the Uniparty? Are we actually seeing this terraform right now where Naomi Wolf, you know, all three of us are old enough to remember Naomi Wolf in the Reagan or in the Clinton administration. I want you to hop in the DeLorean, okay, and go back 5 years, forget in the 90s when she was with the Clintons, 5 years ago, and say, hey, Naomi Wolf's bestie in politics is going to be the former publisher of Breitbart.
Yeah.
And look at you, and you're going to be like, how much coke did you just snort at 2 a.m.? And yet here we are. And so and this coalition of dissenters to COVID is essentially, along with the historic inroads with Hispanics, is essentially Trump's coalition tonight, Daniel.
And Steve, I think what is astounding is probably the issue for which we were the most skeptical of Trump on, I'm actually the most bullish on now, and that's the medical freedom stuff. You know, look,
I didn't even mention RFK Jr.'s name, the most obvious one, for example.
Exactly, because I think there's two issues I want to bring up that I am optimistic about. Because I think there's a lot of things I'm probably more skeptical about than some others here, but things that do not require Congress. And when it comes to medical freedom, now that we are out of COVID, and this is more of a long-term battle, this is really more about sunlight in the HHS agencies on the crap that they're putting out and the misinformation. And when RFK is this close to the point that Lutwick, who is the transition team chief, is starting to, you know, espouse his talking points on national media, saying, hey, we got to look at the autism, the chronically ill. And I'm not a big fan of a lot of, you know, what Lutwick's doing on other things, sidelining a lot of Trump allies, Project 2025. But on that issue, it's very hard to see how RFK could be sidelined at this point. So I think a lot of what we want to get out of it will not necessarily require a legislative change, which would be very tough. The other issue I think we have to bring up for our listeners is January 6th. Okay, I mean, to me, I really have a lot of questions economically, whether we're going to change much, but this is a clean shot. I mean, at least we won't be locked up. And I think at a minimum, we have to, you know, guarantee, trust but verify. But the people that are languishing, there's now people just last week that were arrested on misdemeanor charges 4 years later. Okay, there were people that were thrown into jail after being out on bail, but they said, we can't allow you to be out during an election. While they let out murderers and rapists, you know, pre-trial all the time. So I think that